Admiral Orkel's initial strategic assessment, honed by centuries of hegemony pacification campaigns, was shattered. He had prepared for a target-rich environment centered on a single planet. Instead, he was facing a distributed multi-vector threat emerging from every corner of the Sol system. His fleet, designed for overwhelming orbital bombardment, found itself suddenly surrounded, outnumbered, and outmaneuvered. The element of surprise, which the hegemony always considered its primary advantage, had been completely reversed. "Report on enemy numbers," Raquel bellowed, his mandibles chittering with a new, unwelcome emotion, frustration. "Admiral, it is impossible to get an accurate count," his tactical officer, a slender four-eyed Xyler, stammered. "New signatures are appearing by the minute. Our deep space scans never detected these concentrations of mass. They were perfectly cloaked, integrated into asteroids, gas giant atmospheres, even within the rings of Saturn. Their stealth technology is unprecedented." Admiral Vance's voice, clear and cold, echoed through the hegemony's comms arrays once more. "Admiral Orkel, you have two choices. Retreat from our system and face the wrath of the hegemony for your failure, or engage us and face the consequences of waking a sleeping giant. We did not ask for this war, but we will finish it," Raquel snarled, a guttural sound of pure rage. Retreat was not an option for a Cathar admiral. It was a disgrace. "They are trying to demoralize us. It is a psychological ploy. They cannot truly outnumber us. They are primitives." But even as he spoke the words, the sheer weight of the green icons on his tactical display made them ring hollow. "Prepare for engagement," Raquel commanded, overriding his own fear with sheer, unadulterated fury. "Target their largest concentrations of vessels. Destroy their shipyards! Eliminate their command structures. They may have numbers, but we have superior technology. We have the might of the hegemony." The battle that ensued was unlike anything the galactic hegemony had ever witnessed. It was not a conventional clash of fleets. It was a system-wide brawl, a chaotic dance of destruction unfolding across billions of kilometers of space. The hegemony's ships, designed for long-range precision strikes, found themselves facing human vessels that fought with a bewildering array of tactics. Small, nimble human destroyers, swarms of them, would engage Cathar cruisers in suicidal close-quarters combat, their plasma torpedoes tearing through hegemony shields that were never designed for such brutal point-blank exchanges. Larger human capital ships, heavily armored and bristling with railguns, would lure hegemony vessels into asteroid fields where hidden human mines would detonate, creating devastating chains of explosions. And the human pilots? They were different. Raquel had seen courage before. The disciplined bravery of a Cathar warrior, the cold logic of a Viridian tactician. But human courage was something else. It was reckless. It was emotional. It was a furious, almost suicidal abandon that defied all probability calculations. They would fly damaged ships directly into hegemony formations, their final, defiant acts taking down multiple enemy vessels. They would engage in desperate, daring maneuvers that no logical pilot would ever attempt, twisting and turning through barrages of fire that should have vaporized them. "Admiral," the Xyler tactical officer reported, his eyes wide with a new, terrible understanding. "Their pilots are prioritizing tactical advantage over survival. They are sacrificing individual ships to create openings for larger attacks. Their casualty rate is catastrophic, yet their morale remains unbroken. The numbers are meaningless to them," Raquel roared, slamming his fist on the console. "Their lives are expendable. They are a hive mind." "No, Admiral," Xyler countered, a strange, almost fearful tone in his voice. "They are not a hive mind. Our psychoanalyzers are detecting individual, highly focused emotional signatures. Each one of them is making a conscious choice to die for the others. It is something we do not understand. They call it patriotism and loyalty and love." The sheer, raw emotion emanating from the human fleet was a palpable force, a dissonant chord against the hegemony's stoic, logical approach to warfare. The Cathar were disciplined, but the humans were passionate, and in the crucible of battle, passion was proving to be a terrifyingly effective weapon. The hegemony's advanced weapons, designed for maximum efficiency, also proved less effective than anticipated. Human ships, particularly those emerging from the gas giants, were coated in strange iridescent plating that seemed to absorb or dissipate energy weapons, turning what should have been devastating plasma blasts into harmless light shows. Their kinetic railguns, while lacking the raw power of hegemony singularity cannons, fired projectiles at near-light speed, each one a solid slug of exotic, super-dense material that could punch through hegemony shields with shocking ease. The battle raged for days. Entire sectors of the Sol system were turned into swirling nebulae of debris and superheated gas. The hegemony, for the first time in millennia, was taking significant losses. Not just individual ships, but entire squadrons, entire battle groups. And the humans, they were not slowing down. They were adapting, learning, evolving their tactics with every engagement. Admiral Vance, from her mobile command center hidden within a hollowed-out asteroid, watched the ebb and flow of the battle with a grim satisfaction. "They underestimated us, Ben," she said to Commander Carter, who was frantically coordinating defensive maneuvers. "They thought we were a single planet. They never understood that we had spread, not just across the system, but across the spectrum of human ingenuity. Every colony, every deep space outpost, every hidden facility, they were all building for this moment. Project Exodus was proving to be humanity's salvation. For centuries, while the hegemony debated their fate, humanity had been secretly building, not just warships, but entire self-sustaining ecosystems within asteroids, vast hidden cities beneath the icy crust of Europa, and weaponized space stations disguised as innocuous deep space probes. They had spread their eggs into 1,000 baskets, ensuring that no single attack, no matter how overwhelming, could truly annihilate them. The hegemony, by declaring total war, had assumed a finite target. They were discovering that humanity was an infinite one, a distributed, adaptive, and endlessly resourceful enemy, or Kell. Watching his once pristine fleet suffer devastating losses, felt a cold dread begin to seep into his strategic calculations. This was not a pacification. This was not a controlled eradication. This was a meat grinder. His ships were dying, his best officers were falling, and the humans were still coming, wave after wave, their numbers replenished by the endless, hidden shipyards of their system. He ordered a tactical retreat of a few damaged vessels, a move that went against every instinct of his Cathar training. "We need to understand their stealth technology," he snapped. "We need to understand their tactics. We need to understand them." But as the hegemony forces attempted to disengage and regroup, humanity's response was swift and merciless. Human ghost ships, barely detectable even by their own sensors, would materialize out of nowhere, ambushing retreating vessels, tearing through their weakened shields and vanishing back into the void before the hegemony could react. It was a terrifying display of hit-and-run warfare, perfected in the shadows of their isolation. Admiral Raquel knew, with chilling certainty, that this was not just a war for survival for humanity. It was a war for definition, and the hegemony, in its arrogance, had stumbled into a fight with a species that was about to redefine what it meant to be an enemy. The conflict had risen to a terrifying crescendo, and humanity, far from being annihilated, was now poised to teach the hegemony the true, horrifying meaning of an unstoppable, unyielding force. Admiral Raquel ordered a full retreat of his forward elements, an act of strategic prudence that burned against every fiber of his Cathar being. The hegemony fleet, while still vast, was no longer intact. Their carefully planned annihilation campaign had devolved into a desperate struggle for survival, and the humans, those primitive, chaotic humans, were winning. The very concept was anathema to a hegemony strategist. "Reevaluate all threat parameters," Raquel commanded, his voice devoid of its usual arrogance, replaced by a cold, clinical urgency. "Our initial assessment of humanity as a Class 4 belligerent is severely flawed. Their capabilities exceed all known hegemony-level threats. Their stealth, their distributed command structure, their sacrificial tactics. This is not a primitive species. This is something else entirely." The retreat provided a momentary lull in the system-wide carnage, but it was not a reprieve for the hegemony. Humanity did not pursue in a chaotic melee. Instead, they began to encircle the retreating hegemony forces, using their superior maneuverability and stealth to cut off escape routes. to isolate damaged vessels, and to slowly, methodically, tighten a noose around the once invincible fleet. Admiral Vance, from her hidden command center, observed the hegemony's disarray with a grim satisfaction. "They're trying to understand us, Ben," she remarked to Commander Carter. "They're trying to put us back into their neat little boxes. But we don't fit." "What's next, Admiral?" Carter asked, his eyes gleaming with a fierce pride in his species. "We've proven we can fight them to a standstill. Can we actually win?" "Win is a complicated word, Commander," Vance replied, her gaze fixed on the main tactical display, which showed the hegemony fleet being slowly, inexorably compressed. "They still have overwhelming numbers at the galactic level. Our victory here is only a tactical one, but we are about to make it a strategic one. We are about to redefine the terms of this war, not with weapons, but with a statement." Project Janus was humanity's ultimate gamble, a plan so audacious it had been debated for centuries, held in reserve as a last resort against total annihilation. It wasn't a weapon of destruction, but a weapon of information. Deep within the hollowed-out core of Mercury, a colossal, alien-looking device had been constructed. It was not a cannon or a shield generator. It was an interdimensional resonance projector, a device capable of broadcasting a single, focused data packet across vast distances, not through conventional hyperspace, but through the quantum entanglement of parallel realities. Its target, the minds of every sentient being in the galactic hegemony. Admiral, Dr. Anya Sharma, the lead scientist of Project Janus, reported from the Mercury facility, her voice a calm, focused presence on Vance's comms. "The interdimensional projector is fully charged and stable. We are ready for activation." "Initiate Project Janus," Vance commanded, her voice firm. "Broadcast the human story. Let the galaxy hear it." The device on Mercury flared with an unearthly violet light, a silent scream of concentrated consciousness. No physical beam of energy was released, no visible ripple in space-time. But across the galaxy, in the minds of billions of sentient beings, a floodgate opened. From the highest elder on the Grand Conclave to the lowest citizen on a backwater world, every being in the galactic hegemony was suddenly, involuntarily given a glimpse into the human experience. It was not a message of threats or demands. It was a symphony of raw, unfiltered emotion, a cascade of memory and feeling. They saw humanity's brutal, beautiful history, the rise from caves to skyscrapers, the invention of art and science, the devastating wars, the heartbreaking losses, the soaring triumphs. They felt the terror of ancient predators, the joy of a child's laughter, the pain of betrayal, the fierce loyalty to family and friends. They experienced the despair of facing existential threats, the boundless curiosity that drove them to the stars, the stubborn refusal to give up no matter the odds. It was a broadcast of empathy, a forced lesson in what it truly meant to be human. The hegemony had seen humanity as a virus. Humanity showed them the life of the virus, its struggles, its joys, its desperate fight for survival against a universe that often seemed indifferent or openly hostile. They saw the fear that had driven humanity's belligerence, the desperate need for security in a galaxy that had branded them an anomaly. High Elder Xylos, on the Grand Conclave's central world, collapsed as the wave of human experience washed over him. His shimmering form flickered violently as his ancient, serene mind tried to process the chaotic torrent of alien emotion. He felt, for the first time in millennia, the dizzying highs of human love, the crushing lows of human grief. He saw the universe through their eyes, not as a mathematical equation, but as a vibrant, messy, infinitely precious tapestry. Admiral Raquel, isolated in his flagship as his fleet was slowly encircled, was hit harder than most. The Cathar, with their rigid martial culture, were almost entirely devoid of what humans called empathy. But the wave of Project Janus bypassed all cultural programming, all logical barriers. He experienced a lifetime of human emotions in a single, agonizing, revelatory instant. He felt the cold terror of a child separated from its parent, the burning rage of injustice, the quiet, profound comfort of companionship. He saw his own actions through their eyes, the unfeeling, mechanical destruction of worlds, the cold, calculated slaughter of an entire species. He saw the fear he had instilled, the pain he had caused, and for the first time he understood what suffering truly meant. It was a profound, soul-shattering experience. The hegemony had declared war on humanity. Humanity had responded by declaring war on the hegemony's very concept of reality. They had used their unique courage, not just in battle, but in daring to expose their very souls to an alien species, to force them to understand, to feel, the humanity they had so casually dismissed. The result was immediate and catastrophic for the hegemony, not in terms of physical destruction, but in terms of psychological collapse. Across the galaxy, hegemony command structures seized up. Pilots dropped their controls, scientists stared blankly at their consoles, politicians stood mute in mid-speech. The sheer, overwhelming force of human emotion was too much for their stoic, logical minds to bear. It shattered their complacency, unraveling the very fabric of their carefully constructed worldview. On the Sol system, Admiral Arkell watched as his still-encircled fleet went silent. His command crew, who had also been exposed to Project Janus, were either catatonic or openly weeping, their alien bodies racked with a torrent of unfamiliar emotions. Raquel himself stood trembling, his obsidian armor seeming to crack under the weight of his new understanding. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a profound, agonizing regret. He looked at his tactical display, at the green icons of the human fleet, which were now holding their position, no longer attacking, simply watching. He knew with absolute certainty that they could finish him now. They could unleash a final devastating attack and wipe out his entire fleet. But they weren't. They had made their statement. They had delivered their lesson. "Admiral Vance," Raquel rasped, his voice raw with the echoes of a million human experiences. "This is Admiral Raquel. My fleet is neutralized. We surrender. We understand now. We truly understand what total annihilation means. It is not the destruction of a body. It is the destruction of a soul. And you have just annihilated our ignorance." The hegemony had come to sterilize humanity, to wipe them from existence. But humanity, in an act of breathtaking courage, had turned the tables. They had not just resisted annihilation, they had inflicted a form of it upon their attackers, not by killing bodies, but by shattering minds, by forcing them to confront the very essence of what they had sought to destroy. The climax had not been a final, devastating battle, but a single, silent broadcast that had echoed through the hearts and minds of an entire galaxy, forever changing its perception of what it meant to be alive. The galactic silence that followed Project Janus was deafening. It wasn't the silence of peace, but the stunned, broken quiet of an entire civilization coming to grips with a profound, unwanted truth. Admiral Arkell's surrender was quickly followed by countless others as hegemony fleet after hegemony fleet across the Sol system ceased all hostilities. The combatants were not physically destroyed, but mentally incapacitated, their rigid, emotionless minds overwhelmed by the tidal wave of human experience. Admiral Vance, watching the sudden cessation of hostilities, felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her. They had done it. They had won. But the victory felt hollow, tinged with the immense cost in human lives and the unsettling knowledge of what they had just inflicted upon an entire galaxy. "Ben," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "prepare medical teams. We have millions of wounded, and establish humanitarian aid for the hegemony fleets. They are adrift, incapacitated. They are no longer a threat. They are patience." Commander Carter looked at her, then back at the silent, defeated alien fleets. "Patience, Admiral? After what they tried to do to us?" "Yes, Ben, patience," Vance affirmed, her eyes hard. "Because we are not them. We didn't declare war to destroy. We declared war to survive. And now that we have survived, we must show them the other side of the human equation. Compassion. Even for those who tried to erase us." The irony was not lost on her. The hegemony had come to teach humanity a lesson in annihilation. Humanity had taught them a lesson in empathy, a lesson that had broken them. High Elder Xylos, on the hegemony's central world, was slowly recovering. His shimmering form was still dim, But his consciousness, once serene and harmonious, was now a fractured cacophony of alien thoughts and feelings. He had experienced the full spectrum of human joy and sorrow, and it had left him profoundly changed. He had seen the terror that drove their belligerence, the love that fueled their courage. He saw the hegemony's cold logic for what it truly was, a shield against the painful, beautiful chaos of true existence. He sent out a galaxy-wide decree, not through the harmonious telepathic choir of the conclave, but through a hesitant individual thought, amplified by emergency relays. Cease all aggression. Recall all fleets. Humanity is not an enemy. We were the aggressors. We acted out of ignorance and fear. We have learned a terrible truth. We must understand. The hegemony was plunged into chaos. Ancient, stable societies crumbled under the weight of the enforced empathy. Species that had never known anger suddenly found themselves consumed by it, raging against the elders who had condemned humanity. Species that had never known sadness found themselves weeping for the suffering they had inflicted. The carefully constructed social order of the hegemony, built on logic and suppression of emotion, was unraveling. Humanity had not just won a war, they had instigated a revolution, a paradigm shift on a galactic scale. But the price for humanity was also immense. Thousands of ships lost, millions of lives extinguished, entire colonies devastated. The Sol system was scarred, littered with the debris of an impossible war. The human spirit, however, remained unbroken. They had faced total annihilation and had emerged not just victorious, but transformed. Admiral Vance knew that the biggest challenge lay ahead: how to integrate with a galaxy that was now undergoing a massive, painful, and terrifying awakening. How to guide a civilization that had just been forced to confront the very essence of what it meant to be alive. The climax of the story arrived not as a final, decisive battle, but as a silent, profound understanding between two former enemies. Admiral Raquel, now cleared by human medical teams as psychologically stable, requested an audience with Admiral Vance. He arrived at her command center, no longer in his obsidian battle armor, but in a simple, unadorned robe. His mandibles no longer chittering in aggression, but still almost reverently he knelt before her, a gesture of submission that was utterly unprecedented for a Cathar admiral. "Admiral Vance," his voice was rough, unaccustomed to expressing emotion, "I came to your system to destroy you, to erase you from the stars. I believed you were a blight, an infection. I was wrong. My species, my entire civilization. We had forgotten how to feel. We had built a galaxy of sterile order, believing it to be perfection. You reminded us what we had lost." He lifted his head, his multifaceted eyes meeting hers. I saw the beauty of your world, the laughter of your children, the courage of your soldiers. I felt the pain I inflicted, the fear I caused, and I felt shame. For the first time in my life, I felt shame. And I felt admiration. He struggled with the words, unfamiliar concepts for his species. You are not a virus. You are the cure. You are the heart that the galaxy has been missing. Raquel reached into his robe and pulled out a small, intricately carved metallic object. It was a Cathar ceremonial dagger, a symbol of absolute authority and deadly purpose. He placed it on the table before Vance, its sharp edges gleaming in the dim light of the command center. "This is a symbol of our intent to annihilate. I offer it to you now as a symbol of our surrender and our respect. Do with me and with my fleet as you wish. We have no desire to fight you. We only wish to learn from you." Admiral Vance looked at the dagger, then at the humbled Cathar admiral. She reached out, not to take the dagger, but to gently push it back towards him. "Keep your blade, Admiral Raquel," she said, her voice soft but firm. "It is a symbol of your past. Your future and the future of your hegemony will be very different. The war is over. The lesson has been learned. Now we must all learn how to live with it, together." The gesture, an act of trust and forgiveness, was a profound moment, a turning point not just for humanity, but for the entire galaxy. It showed the hegemony that humanity's strength was not just in their ability to fight, but in their capacity to forgive, to offer a hand instead of a fist. The twist was not a hidden weapon or a cunning maneuver, but the simple, undeniable power of human compassion offered to an enemy who had sought nothing but their total annihilation. The immediate aftermath of Project Janus and Admiral Raquel's surrender was a period of unprecedented galactic upheaval. The galactic hegemony, once a monolith of stoic order, was now a fractured mosaic of species struggling with the raw, unfamiliar torrent of emotion that humanity had unleashed. Some species, like the Cathar, plunged into introspection and shame. Others, like the rigid Cygnian ascendancy, reeled in confusion, their crystalline forms flickering erratically as they tried to reevaluate their entire philosophy of existence. Still others experienced a sudden, violent surge of suppressed emotions, leading to localized conflicts and social unrest as ancient grievances, long buried by logical decree, resurfaced with furious intensity. Admiral Vance, along with a newly formed Human Hegemony Liaison Council, found herself acting not just as a military leader, but as a reluctant therapist for an entire galaxy. Their initial task was to stabilize the hegemony, to guide them through the emotional storm that humanity had inadvertently caused. Human psychologists, sociologists, and philosophers, once dismissed as irrelevant by the hegemony, suddenly became the most sought-after experts in the galaxy. They're like children who've just discovered fire. Admiral, Dr. Aris Thorne, a leading human psychologist, explained during a debriefing. They've suppressed their emotions for so long, built their societies on that suppression, that now that the dam has broken, they don't know how to cope. We've given them the gift of feeling, but it's a painful gift to receive all at once. The emotional resolution was a long, arduous process, one that would span generations. Humanity, in an unprecedented act of forgiveness, committed its resources to helping the hegemony heal. Human medical teams developed therapies to help alien species process their newfound emotions without succumbing to madness. Human engineers helped to re-establish stable command structures, not through force, but through cooperation. Admiral Raquel became a powerful, if controversial, figure within the hegemony. His public confession, his public display of shame and admiration for humanity became a symbol of the hegemony's potential for change. He worked tirelessly to advocate for humanity, to explain their story to species still reeling from the emotional broadcast. He became the voice of the humbled, a living testament to humanity's unique power. They tried to erase us. Ben, Admiral Vance remarked one day, looking out from a newly constructed joint human hegemony orbital station. And now we're helping them rebuild. It's a strange kind of victory. The best kind, Admiral, Commander Carter replied, a quiet pride in his voice. We didn't just win the war. We won their respect. We showed them what they couldn't see. The galactic perception of humanity transformed from that of a volatile anomaly to a complex, powerful, and utterly essential force. They were no longer the virus to be eradicated, but the catalyst for a new era. The hegemony, in its old form, ceased to exist. In its place, a new, more emotionally aware, and diverse galactic concordance began to form, one that recognized the value of every species, especially those that defied easy categorization. The new concordance began to actively seek out and integrate with humanity, not as overlords and subordinates, but as equals. They learned human art, human music, human philosophy. They marveled at human resilience, their capacity for both great destruction and profound creation. They understood, finally, that the very chaos they had sought to suppress was the wellspring of human strength. High Elder Xylos, his form now radiating a gentle, warm light. Not just the cold harmony of the past addressed the new concordance. For 10 millennia, we built a galaxy of cold, perfect order. We believed we were enlightened, but in our fear, we cast out the very light we needed. Humanity showed us that true order is not the absence of chaos, but the harmony of it. That true strength is not the suppression of emotion, but its mastery. They showed us how to truly live, how to truly feel. And for that, we owe them a debt that can never be repaid. Humanity, for its part, emerged from the conflict with a newfound appreciation for its own strengths and weaknesses. They understood the power of their shared consciousness, their collective will, and their unique capacity for empathy. They also understood the terrifying responsibility that came with such power. They had brought the galaxy to its knees, not with bombs, but with feelings. And they resolved to use that power not for conquest, but for understanding, for growth, and for the betterment of all sentient life. The Sol System, once the target of total annihilation, became a central hub of this new galactic understanding. The scars of war remained, but they were fading, replaced by new structures, new technologies, and new alliances. Humans and former hegemony species worked side by side, building a future that none of them could have imagined before the war. The story ends with Admiral Sarah Vance, now an elder stateswoman of a unified humanity and a respected figure across the new concordance, standing on a verdant hillside on a rebuilt Earth. The sky above was clear, and in the distance, she could see the shimmering trails of ships, both human and alien, moving in peaceful transit. Admiral Raquel, his form now subtly softer, less rigid, stood beside her. "They used to fear our chaos," Vance mused, looking out at the world. "They tried to sterilize us because we were too much. Too fast, too emotional, too human." Raquel looked at the bustling, vibrant world, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the sunlight. "Now," he replied, his voice still rough but infused with a quiet wisdom. "They understand. They understand that your chaos is the heartbeat of a truly living species. They understand that your emotions are the colors on the canvas of existence. They understand that humanity is not a problem to be solved, but a miracle to be cherished. And they know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that total annihilation is not the end of life, but the beginning of true understanding. The war had not ended in fire and blood, but in a profound emotional catharsis for an entire galaxy. Humanity had not just fought for its right to exist, it had fought for the right to feel, and in doing so, had taught an entire universe to feel along with it. The aliens had declared war on humanity, and in doing so, had discovered that the true meaning of total annihilation was the utter and complete destruction of ignorance, replaced by the terrifying, beautiful, and utterly undeniable truth of the human heart. The galactic hegemony, in its 10,000-year reign, had never encountered a species quite like humanity. They had cataloged thousands of sentient races, from the gas-dwelling nebulites to the crystalline silicon forms, and had neatly slotted each into a complex, hierarchical system based on technological advancement, social stability, and most importantly, compliance. Humanity, however, defied categorization. They were too fast, too unpredictable, too loud. Their diplomatic overtures were a cacophony of contradictory emotions, their technological leaps unsettlingly rapid, and their internal squabbles disturbingly violent. To the ancient Stoic races of the hegemony, humanity was a persistent, irritating anomaly, a glitch in the serene, logical progression of galactic civilization. High Elder Xylos, a being of pure, resonant energy contained within a shimmering force field, addressed the Grand Conclave. His voice was a harmonious choir of 1,000 intertwined thoughts, calming and authoritative. The Sol 3 anomaly, designated humanity, has reached Stage 4 belligerence. Their recent unprovoked expansion into unclaimed nebulae, their aggressive resource acquisition, and their refusal to adhere to established hegemony protocols present an unacceptable risk to galactic stability. They are a virus in the body cosmic. The prognosis is grim. The treatment is clear. The Conclave, a gathering of the oldest and wisest minds in the galaxy, resonated with agreement. For centuries, they had tried diplomacy, sanctions, and stern warnings. Humanity had responded with a baffling mix of apology, defiance, and a disturbing tendency to find loopholes in every regulation. They were like children playing with fire, but these children had just developed FTL drives capable of crossing entire sectors in days. The risk was no longer acceptable. The decision was made. For the first time in 3,000 years, the galactic hegemony declared total war. The directive was simple: sterilize the Sol system, erase the anomaly, restore the balance. Admiral Raquel of the militaristic Cathar caste was given command of the Annihilation fleet. He was a creature of sharp angles and even sharper intellect, his 4 limbs encased in obsidian battle armor, his mandibles constantly chittering in anticipation. His species was renowned for their strategic brilliance and their absolute ruthlessness. Raquel was a veteran of 100 pacification campaigns, and he viewed humanity not as an enemy, but as a problem to be solved with overwhelming force and calculated brutality. His flagship, the Purity of Purpose, was the spearhead of a fleet numbering in the tens of thousands, a vast armada that stretched for parsecs, designed to overwhelm and utterly obliterate. They arrived in the Sol system not with stealth, but with a terrifying, visible surge of hyperspace portals opening simultaneously, disgorging ships that blotted out the stars. Target acquisition on all Sol system planets. Raquel's voice was a harsh, guttural sound filled with a grim satisfaction. Humanity's homeworld, Sol 3, designated Earth, is our primary target. Prepare orbital bombardment. We will glass their world until nothing but slag remains. Show them what total annihilation truly means. Down on Earth, in the Orbital Defense Command of the Unified Earth Fleet, Admiral Sarah Vance watched the incoming armada on her main display. Her face, etched with the stress of years spent preparing for this impossible fight, was grim. She was a woman in her late 50s, her graying hair pulled back in a severe bun, her eyes cold and steady. Around her, the command center was a hive of frantic, controlled activity. Estimated time to engagement, Admiral? Her chief tactical officer, Commander Ben Carter, asked, his voice tight. Minutes, Vance replied, her gaze never leaving the screen. The sheer number of enemy ships was overwhelming. Humanity had poured all its resources into orbital defense, transforming Earth's moon, Luna, into a massive shipyard and deploying thousands of defense platforms. But it was clear that it wouldn't be enough. The hegemony's fleet was simply too vast, too powerful. They aren't even bothering with an invasion force, Carter observed, a bitter edge to his voice. They're just going straight for the planetary kill. They want to wipe us off the map. They want to make an example of us, Ben, Vance corrected, her voice low. They want to demonstrate what happens to a species that dares to defy the hegemony. They want us to understand that our very existence is an affront to their order. She paused, taking a deep breath. But they have underestimated us, as they always do. They see our squabbles, our chaos, our emotional outbursts, and they mistake it for weakness. They see a single planet and think they are destroying a single species. They are about to discover how wrong they are. Admiral, a young ensign reported, his voice trembling, we're receiving a Priority 1 distress signal. Not from Earth, it's from Mars, and from Ganymede, and from the colonies in the Kuiper Belt, and from deep space. Thousands of them. All at once, Vance nodded grimly. This was the moment. Open a wide-spectrum channel to the hegemony fleet. Let them hear this, she turned to the ensign, and activate Project Exodus. All stations, full power. Now, on the bridge of the Purity of Purpose, Raquel was about to give the final order for planetary bombardment when his comms officer, a multi-eyed Lorian, made a startled sound. Admiral, we are receiving multiple transmissions from multiple sources within the Sol system, but our scans indicated only primitive outposts beyond Sol 3. Ignore them, Raquel snapped. It is a distraction. They are trying to spread our forces thin. Focus fire on Earth. But the transmissions continued, growing in volume, becoming a torrent of data that overwhelmed the hegemony's comms arrays. And then a single clear message cut through the cacophony, broadcast directly from Earth. It was Admiral Vance's voice, calm and clear, translated instantly into the Cathar's guttural language. This is Admiral Sarah Vance of the Unified Earth Fleet. To the Galactic Hegemony, and to Admiral Arkell. You have come here today with a declaration of total war. You have come here to teach us what total annihilation means. But you have made a fundamental error. You have assumed that humanity lives only on one world. As she spoke, the Cathar's long-range sensors, designed to penetrate nebulae and track ships across light years, began to register a terrifying, impossible event. Not one signal, but thousands. Not one small colony, but thousands of them. From every planet, every moon, every asteroid in the Sol system, an impossible number of ships began to emerge. Not just small craft, but massive, kilometer-long starships, sleek and dangerous, their engines glowing with a fierce blue light. The ships didn't just appear from colonized worlds. They emerged from within the gas giants, from deep beneath the frozen crusts of distant moons, from hollowed-out asteroids that had been disguised as inert rocks for centuries. These were not primitive outposts. These were hidden fortresses, vast shipyards, entire cities built in secret. Humanity, in its long, contentious history with the hegemony, had known this day would come. They had not been building an empire for conquest. They had been building a lifeboat, a hidden armada, a network of secret sanctuaries. They had spent centuries mining every available resource, perfecting advanced stealth technology, and pushing the boundaries of deep space colonization, not to expand, but to survive. You called us a virus, Vance's voice continued, a new cold edge to it. A virus in the body cosmic. You came to sterilize the Sol system. Admiral Raquel, you wanted to teach us what total annihilation means? We are about to show you that humanity defines it differently. You see one world. We are this entire system. You declared war on Earth. You just declared war on a galaxy. Admiral Raquel stared at his tactical display, which was now a chaotic storm of red and green icons. The red icons represented his vast, seemingly unstoppable fleet. The green icons, however, were growing in number with terrifying speed, appearing from every shadow, every hidden corner of the Sol system. The numbers were not just significant. They were astronomical. It was not just a defense fleet. It was a civilization, hidden in plain sight, emerging from its long slumber. He had come to swat a fly. He had just kicked a hornet's nest. And the hornets were not just buzzing. They were forming up into attack formations, their numbers matching, then exceeding, his own. The galactic hegemony had declared total war on humanity, believing them to be confined to a single vulnerable planet. They were about to discover that humanity had already expanded, not across the stars, but into the very heart of their own solar system, a fortress galaxy of their own making, ready to fight for every single asteroid, every single moon, every single light year of their hard-won home. And the definition of total annihilation was about to be profoundly, terrifyingly rewritten.